Hey everybody, welcome back to Summit. We're taking a look at the readings for Christ the King. Let's get to it. What makes for a king? A crown, a robe, a throne, a burger. Burger King. Okay. Christ the King. Now, this is what's fascinating. We have this feast every single year. It's the very last Sunday of the liturgical year. So we have Christ the King, and then we turn around, boom, it's Advent. So it's the last Sunday of the year, liturgically speaking, when it comes to the Mass readings. We have it every year. What is there new to say? Christ is the King. He's the King of Kings. He's the King of the cosmos. He's the King of the universe. He's the King of all creation. What else can we possibly say? Well, the readings every year kind of vary and they change. In the first reading, you hear about King David. Now that makes sense, right? We're going to hear about the big name king, the most famous king of the Old Testament, before we talk about the King of heaven and earth, right? But David, we're reminded, was handpicked by God. And even before they anointed David, which they do in this reading from 2 Samuel, the first reading, God had already anointed him, already picked him. So when we hear in this reading, this is like the people are anointing him, but he was already handpicked by God. It was a divine appointment. Even when Saul was still in power, God had sent the prophet Samuel to the house of Jesse in Bethlehem, and he anoints and he handpicks, God handpicks David to be the next king, the successor, right? So we see already that kingship is not just a man-made idea. This comes from God. It's a divine appointment. In the second reading, we're going to hear about how, into the Colossians, that Jesus pays the price with his blood, okay? That Jesus is going to make peace through the blood of the cross. So we see that his kingship is linked to what he does on the cross. So we hear this already from St. Paul. So this is already kind of weird. You're going to hear God's picking David ahead of time, and that Christ is reconciling us and making peace with the blood of the cross. Then we're going to have this really famous reading we usually only hear during the Good Friday or during Holy Week, and that's Jesus on the cross between two thieves. And this is where Jesus shows his kingship, not because he's on a throne of marble, but because he's on a throne of mercy. Not because he has a crown of gold, but a crown of thorns. And we're going to see this dichotomy of the good thief on the right and the bad thief on the left. The good thief, Dismas, who realizes and recognizes on the cross how wrong he has been. And he sees the way that Jesus is acting, and he has a transformation of heart, a conversion of heart. This is the reading from the Gospel of Luke. In the Gospel of Mark, we're told that as the day started and Jesus was put on the cross, that both of the revolutionaries, both of the criminals were mocking him. But something changes in the heart of the good thief over that 3 hours on Good Friday, and he sees the way that Jesus is interacting with his captors, with the centurion, with the soldiers, with the people who are mocking him. He sees the mercy, and then he desires that mercy for himself, and he goes to Jesus at his most vulnerable moment, and he asks for mercy. Hey, please forgive me, Lord. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. Now, it seems very counterintuitive. It doesn't seem very normal or natural that we'd be talking to him that he's a king while he's on the cross. But that's exactly what the sign above Jesus' head said. In Greek and in Hebrew and in Latin, Jesus Christ, King of the Jews. See, the sign said he was a king, but it was what Jesus did on the cross with his body, the way that he acted and reacted and behaved, that demonstrated his true power. Even in his most vulnerable moment, it demonstrated his true kingship. And that's the lesson we have still today. That's why we celebrate Jesus as the King still today and every single year. That even at his most vulnerable, even when he was being physically destroyed, he had never been more powerful because his power came from God. His power was mercy. His power was love. And we're convicted and we're challenged in the same way still today to understand, listen, God, the same way he chose David for a specific mission, chooses you and I for a specific mission. You have a mission that nobody else can fulfill. But it's not going to be fulfilled because you're so powerful physically, or so powerful on earth, or so powerful with your authority or stature or a title, that your mission is only going to be fulfilled to the degree that you let Jesus, his mercy and his love reign in your heart. That Jesus has to sit upon the throne of your heart. And if he can do that, if he can be the king of your heart and the king of your world, the king of your life, then you really fulfill a divine purpose, the purpose that you were created uniquely for. And if you can do that, if you can live with the Lord on earth, you can suffer with him on earth, you can follow him on earth, then you and I someday will reign forever with him in heaven.